Thanks for joining me.
You too. Thank you.
All right, Howard, that's my question. Why won't Democrats support the House GOP bill that would ban this from happening? I think we're all on the same page. We don't want parents and children to be separated. There's nobody on either side of the aisle that wants this. Why won't Democrats vote yes on this bill?
Well, I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I think the piece of legislation you're referring to does more than just address this issue. And, as you and I both know, a lot of campaigns are fought over the details of a piece of legislation as opposed to the broader strokes.
Right, and I understand that, and you're correct. There is more in this immigration bill and the GOP compromise bill than simply banning this. It's not a standalone bill in that sense. It funds the border wall. It ends the diversity visa lottery. It ends chain migration, blah, blah, blah. But I guess my question is, if this is an egregious moral error situation, as Democrats are saying, I mean, they're calling it evil. They're comparing these detention centers to Nazi concentration camps. Shouldn't they then be willing to compromise on a bill that is maybe not ideal in their eyes, but saves these children from being in these camps?
Well, I think the argument that Democrats are making is that for the first 15 months of the Trump presidency, these children were saved from these camps, right? That there was no legislative decision or any change that actually occurred that required the zero tolerance policy to be in effect. And so if the goal is just simply to remedy this situation, it's nothing but a policy change on the part of immigration officials inside the Trump White House.
Okay, but you understand that what you're saying that you're saying Democrats don't want to pass this compromise bill because of the other immigration-related provisions in it, and they don't like it, and that's fine. They don't have to like it, but they're using those reasons as a reason not to vote no. That means that they're holding these children as political hostages, that they're not going to vote for a bill with provisions that they don't like politically, which leaves the children in this standpoint. That's why we sit here and say Democrats are using these children as political pawns, because what you just said, they are.
Everyone's got a point of view. What I won't say, I think as the minority party in both the Senate and in the House, not holding on to the White House, they're not in the position to be the final arbiters of any piece of legislation. So, of course, politically, the president relishes saying this is the Democrats holding him up. He's got a majority in the House. He's got a majority in the Senate. And he doesn't
have enough votes in the Senate to pass a bill without some Democrats voting for it. He doesn't have 60 votes.
That may be the case, but the point is the idea that Democrats are somehow holding up this progress.
Well, they are.
The majority party holds all the levers here, controls Congress, controls the Senate, and controls the White House. And again, 15 months into the Trump presidency, this was not a problem. This is not a problem of Democrats making. We didn't pick up an attorney general and then tell him, hey, to enforce zero tolerance.
Okay, so let's talk about zero tolerance, because we can agree to disagree. I mean, you're right. The Republicans have the presidency, the House, and the Senate. There is a bill that Republicans have presented that would fix this problem. It would
a streaming problem.
Prevent the separation of parents and children. They need some Democratic votes to pass this to get it to President Trump's desk. There aren't any Democrats that are willing to come to the table and vote for this. So I don't know how logically you can blame Republicans for that. Be that as it may, we'll disagree on that. Let's move on to the zero tolerance policy. And I want to ask you, the actual provision here that mandates or prohibits illegal immigrant children from being held in detention for more than 20 days, that's called the Flores document, or the Flores Doctrine. And I want to ask you, what year was that made law?
It was made law, I believe, in 1997 after 12 years of litigation.
Right. It was made law in 1997. What party held the presidency at that time?
Well, the Democratic Party held the presidency at that time.
Right. A Democratic president held the presidency
Although we had a very believing Democrat who was going through an impeachment process.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This was passed. It was passed and through litigation by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Not exactly.
Damn it. Oh, got a streaming problem. Getting stuck. Damn it.
The conservative, not exactly a conservative judiciary right there, the Ninth Circuit Court. And let me ask you too. So we have this law that was passed under, it was 1997, under a Democratic president here. Are these people that are crossing the border, are they breaking our law? Do we have laws against crossing our border in an improper fashion?
I think absolutely we do. And I think the issue here is basically how we decide to treat those folks. Are we treating them as folks who are looking for asylum in our country first and foremost, or are we looking at them as criminals who are breaking the law and don't deserve the protections that our country otherwise affords?
Sure, and that's fair. Let me ask you, are they following the process for seeking asylum in our country? Are they following our law?
I do. I've been to other countries, foreign countries, where I didn't speak the language, where I didn't know the customs, where I didn't know the laws. It would have been very difficult for me to walk into another country and know exactly how I should have comported myself or what behaviors would have been acceptable at the start. So I think there certainly is misinformation around this process. I'm sure there are immigrants who come to the border, seeking asylum and for other reasons as well, who don't speak the language, who don't know the process. And I do think, we're under a president who told us he would thwart terrorists from Muslim countries by giving them a questionnaire at the customs checkpoints and airports.
This is getting a little off the topic, with all due respect. These asylum seekers didn't follow our laws. They crossed our borders illegally, which is a misdemeanor, or if it's a repeat time to cross the borders illegally, it's a felony. The legal way to seek asylum is to go through our ports of entry and claim asylum at that time. That's standard international law. That's not a convoluted set of rules and regulations exclusive only here to the United States. And some of these people paid smugglers to get them from their countries through other Central American countries, through Mexico to the United States. They paid thousands and thousands of dollars. They weren't without resources to research this sort of thing. And I guess my question would be, what would Democrats have us do here? Should we go back to the policy of the Obama administration, the catch and release policy, where if an illegal alien brings a child with them, they are caught, detained but only briefly, and released into the United States and told to come back to a court date? Is that what Democrats want to continue?
I don't know if that's a solution, although it did seem to be good enough for our president for the first 15 months of his presidency. But I appreciate that he's had to come up with a solution here. I think that we need to talk about an actual bipartisan bill that doesn't have poison pills in it, like this wall that President Trump has campaigned on and now is promised will be paid for by Mexico. So this isn't really a question of putting this on Republicans. I'm talking about our president in this case. He's the one who's been out there offering misinformation, calling this a democratic law. As we talked about this being a court decision, not a law.
It is a law. The job of the president of the United States, he's the chief executive. His job is to enforce the law. The law in the book, you don't have to agree with the law in the book. I don't. I think we should change the law. I don't think we should be separating children from their parents. But it's the job of the executive, the chief executive, to enforce our laws. If we don't like laws, the legislature should change that. That brings us back to where we began this conversation. Congress has the opportunity and the responsibility to change this law if it's a bad thing. You mentioned it again. You used the word poison pill in regards to the wall. Democrats won't come to the table, won't vote for this solution because of another political policy that they don't like. That means they're holding these children hostage. I don't know how else to frame this, with all due respect to Democrats. Howard, I always appreciate debating you. I really appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for being here. Our final tipping point of the night, the biggest lie liberals are telling about separating parents and kids in detention centers at the border. We're going to debunk it when we come back.